Before we begin our program, I would like everyone to please silence their cell phones. We're also requesting this evening that, in fairness to the candidates and to aid in the audio for the taping of the program, that the audience refrain from clapping or expressing opinions until the end of the forum. My name is Rosemary Kessling. I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of Haverford Township. The League is happy to welcome you to this forum for candidates for state representative in the 166th district. The purpose of the League of Women Voters is to promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government. We are nonpartisan. We do not endorse any candidate for office. The candidates for this office who are here tonight are Greg Vitali, a Democrat, and James Knapp, Republican. This evening, any member of the audience may ask a question by writing the question on a 3x5 card. They're being collected. We are going to screen them for duplicates, and otherwise we will ask as many as we are able to do in the time allotted. Our moderator tonight is Chris Whiting. He is Vice President of the Haverford Township Historical Society. The League thanks Mr. Whiting and the candidates and you, the audience, for attending this forum. We encourage you to vote on November 8th. Chris will now introduce the candidates and explain tonight's procedure.
Good evening. The candidates tonight have agreed to the following format. They will each make an opening statement of 5 minutes or less and a closing statement of 3 minutes. The order of remarks was determined by coin toss before this program, and Mr. Vitali has won the toss and is elected to open first and close first. I'll read the questions from the audience. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes to answer each question. The timer in the front row will hold up a yellow card when 30 seconds remain, and then we'll hold up a red card, red stop card at the end of 2 minutes. If a candidate would like to offer a 30-second rebuttal to statements that his opponent made, the candidate will be allowed to do this only twice during the program by holding up a colored card. Order of questions to the candidates will alternate. Let's begin with opening statements. Greg, do you want to come up to the podium?
Do a pledge allegiance before we get started?
Excuse me?
Pledge allegiance before we get started?
Sure. You all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance before we start. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris and Rose and Kate and the League, and the League always does a great job, and I've always participated. Their debates are always fair and professional, so I want to thank them. And I want to thank the residents of the 166th District for placing their trust in me all these years. I never take that trust for granted. I try to do the best job I can. And I do want to thank the audience, both you here tonight in person and the viewing audience, for participating in this process. It's very important. Just let me give you a little background about myself. I am a lifetime resident of Haverford Township, 60 years, one zip code. I have that distinction. I am invested in the community. I plan to stay here. And it's great to see over time how this community has really gotten better and really has gotten to be a place where people want to be. It's really heartening. I went to Sacred Heart Grade School, went to St. Joe's Prep High School, where I had the distinction of being on the same high school football team as former Mayor Michael Nutter and current Mayor Jim Kenney. We played on the same field at the same time. I got my BS degree in economics at Villanova, where I also served as adjunct faculty years later, and went to Villanova Law School. Practiced law in Havertown for 12 years, and I think that was a great experience because I did a wide variety of cases, and it really kind of that broad knowledge of Pennsylvania law, I think, really helped me when I got into the legislature. And just having a client next to you practicing law, it really made you understand how the language of the law really matters to people in the community. It was a great experience. I've been in the legislature 24 years. I came in with Bill Clinton. And one of the things we've always tried to do is run a good district office. We've helped thousands of people, and I think we've established a good reputation. And it starts with hiring the right persons and people, and I'm really proud to have a staff who I went to Sacred Heart Grade School with, Terry Wisniewski, who really has done a good job for about 20 years. We also put a premium on keeping people informed. Pennsylvania has a lot of resources it offers citizens, and we want to make sure they're aware of that. We do that with our email blasts, our cable shows, our newsletters, and just going door to door. After 24 years, we continue to do that. I did this week, I'll do it next week, and I'll do it after the election. And the beauty of that is when you have that one-to-one connection with people, you don't need to rely on money to win elections, and you have that independence. So your party can't make you do things you don't want. Interest group can't make you do things you don't want to do. You really have that independence to go up there and then just do the right thing. The most important thing is the legislative aspect of the job. That's why I am there. I've been the chairman of the Environmental Resource and Energy Committee now for 4 years, and my focus has been on environmental policy. What I've done has been quantified by numerous environmental awards over the years. And in Pennsylvania, when you are working on environmental policy in a state so heavily steeped in fossil fuel, coal, oil, natural gas, you're playing defense. You're really trying to stop bad things. We've been successful in doing that. We've been successful in doing that on pretty much a daily basis, fairly regularly. Even this week, we stopped a bill from the plastic bag manufacturers industry that really was going to try to prevent supermarkets from trying to do the right thing and reduce plastic bag waste. I've been active in floor debate in the State House on many topics, not just the environment. I read bills, I ask questions, and people who know me in Harrisburg know that I am a serious legislator. If reelected, frankly, I plan to do the same things I am doing now. My focus is on climate change, the most important environmental issue facing the planet. Pennsylvania produces 1% of the world's greenhouse gases, so when you can be the chairman of the Environmental Committee in a state that is such a heavily polluting state, I think you're in a good position. I intend to do the same thing. I intend to do things like promote renewable energy, energy conservation. I intend to work on all sorts of environmental issues. In closing, I'd just like to thank the League for the good work they've done again. Looking forward to a very positive, policy-oriented hour. So thanks again.
Mr. Knapp.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, the League. I'd also like to thank everybody for coming out, especially my wife, Kathy, daughter, Jessica, and her friend, Nick, daughter, Kira. Kira, I'll try not to embarrass you too much tonight. I got into this race my first time running for public office. I got into this race for quite a few reasons, but the primary one is I don't think we're being represented effectively at Harrisburg. Greg just said if elected, he plans to do the same thing, and quite frankly, I don't feel that's good enough. By his own admission, he has become a single-issue candidate focusing on the environment and the environment in areas outside of the 166th district. We have some environmental issues that need to be addressed here, but consistently when you talk to the people of 166th district, issues like the economy, jobs, education are at the top of the list of importance, not environmental issues. And with his environmental issues, unfortunately, if he plans to do the same thing, he's got a record of unachievement. He hasn't passed a single bill in 23 and a half years, and the bill he did pass was naming April 22nd Earth Day. He talks about his relationships in Harrisburg. However, the relationships he has in Harrisburg are not very strong. He's got some votes that are far outside the mainstream. things on a variety of things, leaving the scene of an accident, Megan's Law. This puts him at odds not just with his own party, but members of both parties. So therefore, when he needs to have something done, he's not taken serious on some of these issues. So we need somebody that's going to represent our issues of importance in Harrisburg, and that's something that I plan to do. Our commissioners and our schools, they all need to get their fair share of the money we send to Harrisburg needs to come back to us. So I look forward to hearing from your questions tonight. Hopefully we can get into a little bit more detail on some of these topics. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening statements. I'll direct this question to Mr. Vitali first.
Chris, can you be louder?
Sure.
I'm having trouble hearing.
Everybody okay? Is that a little bit better?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, I'll try to project a little bit more. So, Mr. Vitali, the first question. What do you believe is Pennsylvania's biggest environmental problem, and what will you do in your term to address it?
Right. I think as I was talking about in my opening statement, climate change. Pennsylvania produces a full 1% of the world's greenhouse gases, 1% of the world's greenhouse gases. We have a lot of coal-fired power plants. So it comes from the utility sector and also comes from the transportation sector. We have tons of trucks and cars on the road. So we put an enormous amount of CO2 into the atmosphere. That has to be dealt with. I think, what you have to do is move away from fossil fuels. You do that by expanding renewable energy. You do that by energy conservation. I've introduced a bill this term to expand the alternative energy portfolio standard. I've introduced a piece of legislation that would try to reduce the demand for natural gas by having gas distribution companies do things to cut demand just like they have to do to cut electricity. Methane leakage, fugitive methane emissions are a very serious problem. Methane, which essentially is the main component of natural gas, is a powerful greenhouse gas. Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas, and it can leak into the atmosphere in the natural gas distribution process, anywhere from the wellhead to the burner tip, from the time it comes out of a drilling well as it goes through distribution lines and trunk lines and basically till it gets to the point of your home or car. So that climate change has to be dealt with regard to methane. We need strong regulations relating to methane. Many things to do, but it would be simply irresponsible to ignore this problem.
Repeat the question, Chris. Exactly. Could you repeat the question?
Sure. What do you believe is Pennsylvania's biggest environmental problem, and what will you do in your term to address it?
Okay. With Pennsylvania's, number one, the climate change, I fail to believe that that's the biggest problem. The climate change alarmists have been claiming doom and gloom for the past 30 years, and none of their predictions have come true. CO2 is not a pollutant. CO2 is a naturally occurring element which is essential for plant life. Without it, we wouldn't have food. The environmental issues I'm more concerned with are the ones that are here, right in our town. The Harvard Road redevelopment, which is a DEP site, should be cleaning up. We should have it cleaned up. We have flooding issues. We have sewage overflow issues. These are the ones that are more important, and these are the ones that I would plan to address and hope to address when I'm in Harrisburg.
Thank you. Craig, back to you. What is your proposal to correct the gerrymandering in the state?
Okay, who goes first on this one?
Don't we
Should we
alternate?
I'm sorry, Mr. Knapp.
Don't mean to cause any trouble to you, Chris.
Okay.
Question?
What is your proposal to correct the gerrymandering in the state?
There's nothing. I mean, I think the process we have in place is fine. It's got to be done by the legislatures. I know there's some people out there that are trying to talk about an independent body that want to do this, but the independent bodies generally aren't independent. The legislators.
You can't hear really at all.
Just pull that a little bit closer.
All three of you are just having trouble hearing.
Is that one?
The Constitution mandates that it's the responsibility of the legislators, and the legislators have to be ultimately responsible because they're the ones that are responsible to the voters. To put it to an independent group, you're essentially creating a bureaucracy, and I don't think there's really truly an independent. They're going to be political appointees regardless of what independence are they claimed independence.
Greg?
No, redistricting is a crucial problem. You only have to look at the 7th Congressional District and see that monster, see it stretches from Upper Darby to the outskirts of Reading to know something is seriously wrong. And that is wrong because it is steeped in politics. And because politicians choose their constituents instead of constituents choosing their politics, that's the problem. What you have, that causes polarization because you have so many non-competitive seats that the politicians just appeal to their base and they have no incentive to compromise. With competitive seats, there's an incentive to compromise. There's two different, and it has to be independent. The current system, both at the federal level, the way we choose the federal lines, which is essentially the way a bill becomes law, is different than the way we choose our state house lines. And the only reason Haverford Township is blocked into 2 legislative districts now is because of the politics of gerrymandering. It was an effort to move my Republican support to the Adolph seat and the Santora seat to make them more Republican, and they made this more Democrat. Totally based on politics, nothing to do with the benefit of this community. That's what you get with gerrymandering. You get a breakup of Haverford Township, and you get an appalling 7th Congressional District. There are many proposals out there. It's very tough. I mean, the main problem here is, it's always tough to change the rules when the people benefiting from the rules are the ones empowered to change them. And that's the problem now. But it's a very serious problem. It should be dealt with. There's some proposals out there to do it, and I would support the reasonable ones.
Okay, my next question would be for Mr. Vitali. Does the extreme partisan politics in the U.S. concern you? If so, what remedies would you suggest to work toward?
Yes. We've seen the lack of civility in Washington. I think the same thing is happening in Harrisburg. I think the main problem is the attitude of elected officials that what it should be is when the election is over, you have a good fair fight during the campaign season, and when the election is over, it's time to govern. The attitude we have now is when the election's over, if you lose, your attitude is let's thwart the efforts of the winning party so that they can be ineffective and we get in next time. And that's really not the way it should be. I think it's up to people to elect good leaders. We talked about redistricting. There's no magic bullet to this problem. People need to step forward like yourselves, and enter the political realm. But there's no easy solution to the problem. But there is this lack of civility that has gotten worse over time.
The question is primarily, does it concern me? Is the extreme partisan?
Does the extreme partisan politics in the U.S. concern you? If so, what remedies would you suggest to work toward?
It's concerning, particularly the political campaigns. It just gets so nasty. The partisan, and I'm going to focus more on what's at the state level than at the national level, since we're running for a state office here. I think it's overblown. I think there's a lot of partisanship, but there's also a lot of bipartisan work, and particularly in the state, Democrats and Republicans come together to work together on things at regional issues, and if you look at a lot of the votes, which I follow a lot of the votes, an overwhelming majority of them are unanimous. So the partisanship is necessary because it, number one, prevents one party from steamrolling another, and pushing and forcing an agenda. So it kind of, whether you call it gridlock or partisanship, some of that is necessary. Some of that is necessary for the exchange of ideas, and also to prevent, like I said, just a steamroll effect of just somebody forcing their own agenda or one-party agenda over on the other.
So the next question is, do you support privatization of our liquor stores?
Absolutely, 100%. I think it's a terrible system we have. It's the worst system in the state. I'm sorry, our state's is the worst system in the country. To do it to protect a few hundred jobs is not a good enough reason to do it. The pricing is too expensive. The selection is no good. One of my biggest reasons on a personal level is I remember last year we had a particularly big snowstorm. I was out shoveling for about 3 or 4 hours. My wife made a pot of chili. We were planning on having chili and a bottle of wine. I went to the state store at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it was closed. I thought, if this was privatized, I can guarantee you whoever owned that, the proprietor, would certainly be open for business. I think the reasons against it, safety reasons, I just don't think they bear out. I think they're scare tactics, and again, state has no business being in the liquor business.
Thank you. Mr. Vitali?
Yeah, I mean, that is a contentious issue, and we actually are continuing to move towards increased customer convenience. We passed, the product of compromise this past June, we passed a liquor modernization bill. I mean, right now, because of that, you can have direct shipments of wine to your homes. State stores, more state stores will now be opened on Sundays. State stores will be opened on holidays. You'll be getting longer hours and so forth. So you're seeing a lot of that. And just frankly, right when we broke this past yesterday, day before, we also passed another measure along that line. We just put a bill on the governor's desk that would allow distributors to sell beer in any quantity they want, be it a six-pack or a single bottle. That bill also involved being able to ship out-of-state beer. People can ship cases of beer directly to in-state Pennsylvania homes. So we are moving in that direction. I mean, that is an example of the product of compromise of two pretty divergent positions, and I actually did vote for that, both the liquor modernization bill we passed in June and this past bill that dealt with the beer distributors we just passed this week.
Thank you. Mr. Vitali, how should state school funding be distributed?
Fairly. I think, okay, so we just passed a fair funding formula that deals basically with basic education, and that's pretty much the largest component of our budget, getting that money into the 500 school districts of Pennsylvania. The previous methodology was out of date. This funding formula was much more equitable. The problem is it only deals with new money, so that's probably only about 5% of the budget this year. But the real problem is not so much, I think, the distribution formula, as it is we as a state are not driving more money into basic education. We're still, the state itself only pays about 37% of what schools spend on basic education. That should be about 50%. And if that were the case, it would take the pressure off of local school districts to raise property taxes and provide better funding for our schools. So I think the real problem is not so much the formula, but the inadequate amount that the state allots to basic education.
Thank you. Mr. Knapp?
I agree with part of what Greg said as far as the balancing of it is not equitable. However, if you look at Haverford, the three school districts within the 166, you have Haverford, Radnor, and Lower Merion. There are three of the top school district of 500 school districts. They're all in the top 5. They're also all in the top 5 is the least amount of money that they receive from the state. I think too often politicians talk about school funding as if you can just throw money at a situation and it's going to improve the situation. Money's not the answer. If you talk to school teachers in underperforming school districts, money's not what they're looking for. Money's really so far down the list. It's these kids coming to school being ready to learn, being prepared to learn. You can throw as much money at you want. You're not going to help these underperforming school districts. The 37%, I would like to see the state do less. I think we need more control at the local level. Let our local officials who are accountable to us answer to us and not the state. The more the state has control, the more money the state is responsible for funding our schools. You're going to start to see consolidation of school districts. You're going to see schools go under. You're going to see school districts go under. They're going to go from 500. They're going to be less and less. We're going to have less and less ability, and our voices are going to come quieter because we're not going to have as many people that are accountable to us. One of the things, a major thing, and it's very rarely talked about with schools, is in the city of Philadelphia, their tax abatement program. You have these homes that are worth next to nothing that are being built up to become hundreds and thousands of dollars, yet they're still paying taxes at a rate of a $30,000 home. You have these new construction projects where Philadelphia is building skyscrapers and their businesses are not paying into the school system, and the Philadelphia school system is continually going back to the state asking for more money, and that money's coming from us. So we have amongst the lowest funded schools from the state, yet we're funding too many of the other school districts.
Mr. Knapp, how much control over charter schools should local school districts have? Are you in favor of House Bill 530 expanding charter schools?
Not really familiar with the specifics of the bill, but I do believe that the local school district should have a little bit of control over the charter schools. If charter schools are getting public money, they absolutely have to be accountable to the people that they're receiving the money from.
Mr. Vitali?
Yeah, I think, I was around when charter schools came out, and I think conceptually they were a good concept initially, but they sort of got beyond their initial mission. The initial mission of charter schools was to provide something different than the local public school would provide, maybe some sort of specialty specializing in dancing or math or something different. They weren't supposed to be doing the same thing as public schools. And although there are many good charter schools around, I think the problem is they take resources away from brick and mortar public schools. I think, we have I'm proud of having one, 3 of the best school districts in the state right here. I think our school district should have a very strong say in whether a charter school should be allowed in this area, because in doing so it would take away important resources for our schools. So and they don't have the same expenses. They don't have to meet the same standards. They don't that our brick and mortar public schools do. And if you look at the data about the performance of charter schools, graduation rates, test scoring, they don't perform better than our brick and mortar public schools. I think our efforts, main efforts, have to be making our brick and mortar public schools as good as we can, because they are the bedrock of our communities. They make our communities better. That I think is where our primary focus needs to be.
Mr. Vitali, Pennsylvania does not have a fully funded state-run pension system. How would you correct this?
The big problem with SERS and PESers, which are the pension systems for the school employees and the state employees, is we have this huge unfunded liability. There's about $60 billion with a B in unfunded liability. That is the projected payouts to future retirees is $60 billion more than what's in there now. It's a very intractable problem. I think we took good first steps in addressing it in 2010 with Act 120. I don't think people appreciate that we've already done pension reform legislation. You know, by doing things like increasing the retirement age in some circumstances, reducing the multiplier for the accumulation of benefits, increasing the vesting periods. We really have done some pension reform, and I do think there's more we can do. And I think the good analogy here is those who want to convert all state employee pensions to a 401k versus the reforming the current system. It's almost like selling the state stores versus modernization. I think the approach we need to take with regard to pension reform is not converting all employees to a 401k, which I don't support, but continuing with the reforms and adding to the reforms of Act 120 and looking, things like dealing with the anti-spiking provisions, so employees can't just run up a lot of overtime in their last 2 years and just get a much higher figure. Sort of wait that out over like 5 years, for example. Just things along those lines that all seem to make sense, that make sense and are clearly abusive, dealing with those problems, and then we need to find a different way to deal with that $60 billion unfunded liability. We've got to find more money to drive into that.
Mr. Knapp?
Yeah, I think the first thing that needs to be done, I mean, this is beyond crisis, the pension program right now, and it's being unfunded, is, you got a flooded house, you got to turn off the water. You don't mess with the pensions for the people that are in the system right now. So for our school teachers and our state employees that are in this public, they took these jobs with the expectation that this was part of their compensation plan. You can't take that away from them. But that doesn't mean you have to continue it. Pension programs are pretty much extinct in the private sector. They really need to go that way in the public sector. The 401k model is clearly the model that new employees need to be going toward. As far as funding the current ones, there's avenues out there. I mean, there's sources of revenue that we've got to rely on, like the Pennsylvania lottery. If you could take some of the lottery proceeds, some of the gambling proceeds, that they just with the casinos could be used to fund this mandate. But you just can't keep piling on the backs of the residents. I mean, you've seen that $30,000 per taxpayer, per working resident, is going to pay for the pensions of the retirees. I mean, these pensions were put in place decades ago when the life expectancy was only supposed to be 60-some years old. These people were supposed to collect their pensions for a couple of years. It's a good thing, but no one's dying as they used to. They're living longer. Therefore, we're paying for every employee that's working, we're paying this one that's retired. People are retiring at 60 years old, living another 30 years, collecting a full pension. It's just not manageable. It can't be sustained.
Thank you. Mr. Knapp, the next question. Should natural gas drillers be required to pay a state tax on Marcellus Shale production? If so, how much?
One of the misconceptions out there with the drillers is that they don't pay a tax. They don't pay a severance tax, but they do pay an impact fee. And the impact fee is like a silly game that the politicians played for people that signed a no tax pledge. They said, well, let's just call it a fee. Well, they're still paying up to $200 million a year in impact fees. So whether you call that $200 million a fee or whether you call it a tax, it's still money that's coming from them. So they do pay it. State and local revenues is about, $3.5 billion that they're paying into the system. Now, if they're paying a severance tax, the percentage of it, it's got to be worked out with the industry. The state of Pennsylvania, when they started kicking this around with the severance tax, had 150 active wells. I believe that's down to about 17 right now. So when Governor Wolf ran for office 2 years ago, he sat there, if you all remember the classroom, he sat there and said, we're sitting on a gold mine, and he's going to raise $1 billion. There's no way in the world he could have raised $1 billion. So the first thing we need to do is have an honest conversation about what these drillers are making, what they're bringing out. The severance tax is something that absolutely needs to be done, but it's something that the money needs to be allocated for something specific like education, like funding the pension crisis, the pension liability, and not just go into the general fund for politicians' whims.
Mr. Vitali?
Yeah, no, I actually was the first legislator in Pennsylvania to introduce a severance tax bill, and I do think we need a severance tax of about 6%. I think that's about right. Every major natural gas producing state in the country has a severance tax. The impact fee, I haven't checked within the past 6-8 months, but that effective rate was like 1.7 or 8%, some ridiculously low figure. Now, admittedly, natural gas prices are at a low point right now, but they will increase. They will increase over time, and that gas isn't going anywhere. We have a very high quality shale formation. It is very close to the markets of the eastern seaboard, and this is a resource of the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth needs the money. Drillers should pay their fair share, and the only reason they don't do it is, and it's very clear if you look at the millions they spend on lobbying expenses, if you look at the millions they pay in campaign contributions, you look at any environmental committee room, the well-heeled lobbyists just populate that place, they populate the halls. It's all about special interest group money, that they don't pay the severance tax, they fight regulations on drilling, they're not giving fair royalty payments to the landowners, and they've just defeated a bill to do that. It's all about money and power. They ought to be paying a severance tax like every other state, and they absolutely ought to be doing it. We desperately need the money.
Thank you. Mr. Vitali, what will you do to combat the issue of opioid and heroin addiction?
Okay. Happily, this is one of those bipartisan issues because, opioid use, is really out of control. I think last year in Pennsylvania, maybe 2,000 to 3,000 people died of drug overdoses. Opioids are a gateway drug to heroin, so it's a very serious problem. What we have done in the legislature just very recently is passed a packet of bills with bipartisan support. Representative Santour, myself, others supported these bills that did a number of things. They including putting limits on the amount of the length of a prescription for these opioids. So they're not getting out of control, and also requiring doctors to look at databases. So before they prescribe these drugs, to see what is the history of this patient's use. Is he getting the opioids from another source, and so forth. So we have put in, and even the maker of the bill, Senator Yaw, freely admitted this is not a solution to this serious problem, but it is a good first step.
Thank you. Mr. Knapp?
This is a kitchen sink type of issue. I mean, you throw everything at it that you possibly can. This is, I personally have been to the funerals of too many people that have suffered from this. I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago over at St. Denis where the HADA group is really trying to bring this to focus, and it's a tremendous problem. It's a devastating problem. A couple of things that need to be done at the state level is really just give the local groups the resources that they need. The answer and the solution is going to come from the local groups. I hate to think that the state, if we're relying on the state to do something like this, it's not going to get done. It's just to get out of the way and provide resources for the local communities to do what they do best. The state has a tendency to have one set of rules and apply them across the land. Well, the good ideas are going to come from the local groups, from the mothers and fathers and sons and daughters and brothers and sisters that live this. They're going to have the solutions. Restricting of doctors, educating the doctors. These doctors, we have a tendency to look at doctors and think of them as all-knowing. They're really not. A couple of years ago, just in my family, my wife had foot surgery, my daughter had a wisdom teeth out, and my son had a broken arm, all in the same week. they were all given prescriptions for Percocet. We must have had, or could have had we fulfilled the prescriptions, which we didn't, about 150 Percocet pills in our house. It's just insane. It wasn't necessary. We didn't need to be filled. They need to have like 2 or 3 of them. So the final component, which I didn't hear Greg mention anything about, is the law enforcement. They have to come down really hard on that. And Greg, when you've had the opportunity to create things like drug-free school zones, drug-free park zones, you voted against them. When you've had the opportunity to vote against heroin dealers, increasing the penalties, or not even increasing the penalties, but reducing the amount on them, you voted against that also. So we have to really come down on the people that are dealing this. If you're selling drugs that are killing people, you got to be treated as a murderer.
Okay, I'll play my card. No, I do actually think that people who commit crimes need to go to jail for a long time. I am by no means soft on crime. What he's referring to is the concept of mandatory minimum sentencing, which you can agree to, which you can agree or disagree. But don't say I want to reduce the crimes on heroin dealers. I certainly do not. The reality is, we elect judges as impartial people, and they need to be able to look into the facts and circumstances of each case to decide what is the appropriate penalty, the seriousness of the offense and the background of the individual. Mandatory minimum sentences prevent them from doing that. All I'm saying is let judges do justice.
Thank you, Mr. Vitali. Go ahead, Jim.
The heroin bill or vote that I'm referring to had nothing to do with minimum mandatory sentencing. What it was is it was a bill which the sentence was already instilled in the bill. It was a matter of reducing the amount. So it was if they were, I don't remember the exact amount, but I think it brought from 2 grams necessary to be sentenced down to 1 gram. It was moved the 1 gram down, or whatever the amount was, as intent to distribute. And it had nothing to do with a minimum mandatory sentence.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'll send it to you.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce Don Kelly from the Haverford Civic Council to ask some more questions.
Okay, Mr. Knapp, are you the next one to start first? I believe. Okay. All right. The question is, should municipalities in the state be allowed to pass gun laws that are stricter than the state gun laws?
No. It's not fair to the gun owners. The Second Amendment gives people the right to carry arms, and we shouldn't have to guess if we're driving across the state what the laws are, whether we're allowed to have a gun in our car. They've got to be uniform throughout the state.
Mr. Vitali?
No, I think, the circumstances in Warren County with regard to gun problems are much different than Philadelphia, for example. And I do think that Philadelphia ought to have some leeway in, doing things like just very basic things like, banning assault weapons, which still have not been banned in Pennsylvania. So I have been a supporter of more strict gun legislation consistently over time, and one of those things is allowing municipalities to judge the circumstances in their municipality, the nature of the crime problem in their municipality, and to legislate accordingly.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Mr. Vitali. What is your stance on increasing funding and support for our township's fire departments, considering the decline in volunteerism in recent years?
I do know that the legislature generally has been generous to fire companies with regard to loan programs. We used to have the ability to distribute CRP grants, which I regularly gave to my companies. I honestly cannot tell you right now, I cannot tick off the various grant and loan programs the state offers our fire companies. I do know that I believe they are generous programs, and would be more than willing to cooperate, as I have in the past, with the chiefs of our fire companies throughout the district in applying for these loans and grants. But I've not, I've not really heard an articulated need recently.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Knapp?
Repeat the question, I will get the wording of it a
Right.
little bit better.
It was... Okay. What is your stance on increasing funding and support for our township's fire departments, considering the decline in volunteerism currently?
I think the funding of it should come more from the municipality than it should from the state. Again, go back to what I was talking about with one of the other topics. The more the state has control of funding, the more control they want to take. In Haverford Township in particular, I think we do a great job with our fire. We have 5 fire companies that are full volunteer. I know they're all suffering a little bit from their numbers with volunteers, but anything that the state goes and any control or emphasis we give toward the state, I think will hurt that even more. So again, keep local control, keep it more in the municipality than at the state level. If there are grants available and loans available, we need to be aware of that. I know there are. I mean, every year we get the fire companies get notification to put in their requests, but it needs to be uniform. The more state control they have, we're going to lose. The smaller communities are going to lose to the bigger cities.
Thank you. Beginning with Mr. Knapp, what would be your priorities for passing legislation were you to be elected? What would be your priorities for passing legislation were you to be elected?
Taxes in the budget. I mean, the priorities would be in lowering taxes and reducing mandates for some of our businesses. Big topics of conversation, political conversation, is education. Well, human services is also a huge part of the budget. It's larger, actually, than education, but between human services and education, they make up about 75% of the budget. The best way to reduce the cost of human services is to get people working again. And to get people working again, we've got to provide incentives for those businesses, and that's by reducing the tax rate. We have amongst the highest corporate tax rate in the country. Some of our excessive regulations need to be pulled back because they're just outdated. And with small business and some of the work we're trying to do with small business, most small businesses employ less than 4 people. So we need to do whatever we can to reduce the restrictions on them so they can hire people, so we can get more people working and get them on livable wages.
Thank you. Mr. Vitali?
Yeah, I mean, you can approach this question 2 ways. I understand that the greatest need and the greatest desire in this community is quality education. And again, I do think that if I could do one thing as a legislator, it would drive more money into basic education. That would do a number of things. It would make our schools better. And we have good schools, honestly, but I mean schools like in Philadelphia and Chester, Upland, and others, making sure that those kids get a good quality education would be very important. But also, if you drive more money into basic education, it deals with the problem of seniors and property taxes throughout the state. So I think that basically, adequate fair funding of basic education, I think, is the most important change we could make. I mean, I have my own environmental agenda, which you've already heard, but truly, I do get it. I do get the fact that what really concerns this district is the schools they send their kids to and the taxes they have to pay to fund it, and the parochial school parents making sure they get a fair share, and special needs kids being taken care of. I truly get all that, and I would never compromise those values that this district has. And I've always voted that way, and I always rely on our school board directors, people like Larry Feinberg and others, to sort of guide me into when these complicated bills come by, what is the best for this community, and he can attest to my voting accordingly.
Thank you. Mr. Knapp, you're exercising your second and last rebuttal.
Thanks. Yeah, it's interesting that you say your priority would be education, yet at the local intermediate unit meeting in May, you stood up in front of the group of educators in Delaware County and said, 90% of your focus is on the environment. And when it comes to education, you just rely on what Larry Feinberg tells you to do. Well, with all due respect to Larry Feinberg, he's not our state representative. And for 90% of your efforts to be on the environment, aside from not having any legislation passed on that, you haven't gotten anything accomplished. Finally, you said something about parochial schools getting their fair share, yet you're vehemently opposed to EITC, which is a lifeline to a lot of the parochial schools.
Do you wish to exercise your second and last rebuttal, Mr. Vitali, or not? You want to save it?
I'll save it.
Okay, thank you. All right, last question that I will ask, and then we'll ask Mr. George Lavin, also from the Haverford Township Civic Council Board, to ask the remaining questions. This last question is, what is your opinion on banning all strikes by employees of public agencies, for example, SEPTA, and have instead some mandatory arbitration in the event of collective bargaining impasses? Mr. Knapp.
Banning all, say that the first part of that again?
That is what is your opinion on banning all strikes by employees of public agencies?
You can't ban all strikes. I mean, they have a contract, they have a collective bargaining agreement, they have the right to strike. Unless public safety is the primary issue, you can't ban a strike.
Mr. Vitali?
No, I agree with that. I think that question usually comes up in the context of teachers' strikes, and I also oppose banning teacher strikes. But they have a system in place, a series of things that have to be followed. They're allowed to go out, but they have to come in at some point so the 180-day school period is not compromised. So to take away a union member's ability to strike altogether really undercuts their bargaining position. I think a framework has to be set up to achieve a fair result. And I think that currently exists with regard to teachers. Perhaps that could be a model where it's not working in other arenas.
Thank you. Mr. Lavin?
Since I'm getting up here a little late in the evening, just to let the audience and the candidates know, we're going to wind up at 8:40 or so and let the candidates make their closing statements. With that in mind, let me go to my first question, and for Mr. Vitali. With respect to the judges in Pennsylvania, judges are currently elected. What is your position with respect to merit selection of judges?
Wholeheartedly support merit selection of judges from Superior Court, Supreme Court, Commonwealth Court, Common Pleas level. I support merit selection of judges. I think the problem right now is that people go to the polls really not having a clue as to the qualifications of various judges. And the problem is, people who go before judges because they've been subject to this electoral process may very well have contributed heavily to judges' campaigns. Typically, unions, for example, are in support of the current system because they do fund judges. So it's a problem. There are different models out there. By the way, this could be done. Typically, blue ribbon panels submit a number of people to a governor, and so there are systems that are set up, different tweaks on that, where judges can be selected by merit. But I certainly support merit selection of judges.
Mr. Knapp?
I would agree. Merit selection is clearly the way to go. I mean, when you have judges on the ballot statewide, they're generally on the ticket with who knows how many other 5, 6, 10, 12 other candidates. You don't have time to educate. Most of us that are not attorneys aren't aware of what the judges are, so merit selection, I think, is significantly better than just people voting their party.
Next question for Mr. Knapp. With respect to the Pennsylvania budget, can we or should we balance the Pennsylvania budget?
Well, it's law. It has to be balanced. It is balanced. It has to be balanced.
Okay.
Want to ask another question?
I'm just reading what I've got here. Mr. Vitali, is there an issue there, or?
Well, the Constitution does require that we, unlike the federal government, we can engage in deficit spending. We do have to pass a balanced budget each year. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Vitali, next question. With respect to, and this is, I guess, related to immigration, do you support sanctuary cities such as Philadelphia, and how should the state react to sanctuary cities such as Philadelphia?
Right. I mean, the issue there is legislation we recently considered that would expose cities like Philadelphia to civil liability unless their police officers essentially do the work of federal immigration officers, and when they arrest someone, ask them their immigration status and if they have reasonable cause. I don't support this, and frankly, most cities don't support this, and there's a lot of technical reasons why they don't, why this system just does not work in the real world. That legislation we considered happily did not go to the governor's desk. It was not passed. I don't think it's the province of our township and city police officers to do the work of ICE and their officers. It's a system that would not work and expose us to needless liability. And the liability wouldn't even be for the people arrested who may have done damage in the city. This bill would have said, if we don't engage in that policy of our police officers, then any damage done by an illegal would expose the city to liability. So I did not vote for that law, would not vote for that law. I think it's bad policy.
Mr. Knapp?
Without knowing all the specifics of the bill in the state right now, sanctuary cities are an abomination. There's no reason they should have it. What I do know of this bill is that it requires the local police to cooperate with federal authorities for illegal immigrants that have committed crime. And for that to even be a consideration that requires our police officers to cooperate with federal law enforcement agencies, it's insane that's even a topic of conversation. There's just no reason sanctuary cities should exist, nor should our police officers, for any reason, not have to cooperate with fellow law enforcement officers.
Okay. Next question again for you, Mr. Knapp. What is your opinion about a bill that would eliminate the statute of limitations for criminal charges for child sexual abuse cases?
For
child sexual abuse, eliminating the statute, essentially.
I'm in favor of limiting the statute of limitations for criminals.
Yes.
For individuals that do that. I think, that the statute of limitations, if it's being 7 years, if somebody molests a child or rapes a child, and that 7-year window goes, they shouldn't get I beat it. No, they should be held forever, as if they murdered someone. So there's no statute of limitations for murder. If this question is geared towards one of the bills that was recently up in Harrisburg, which had to do with eliminating the statute of limitations, I do have a little bit of an issue with it as it pertains to institutions. So to be able to go after public or private institutions like the Catholic Church, you're penalizing its members for things that have happened decades ago, so I don't think that the members should be liable in civil instances, but in criminal cases, 100%.
Mr. Vitali?
The current statute of limitations to bring a criminal action against someone accused of child molestation is when the alleged victim is 50 years old. We've expanded over time. I think that's a more than adequate period of time. I think that if everyone was in fact guilty who was accused, I would be in favor of lifting the statute of limitations. But in fact, there are people who in fact aren't. Statute of limitations protect the right of the accused because over time, if enough time passes and you are in fact innocent, you don't have the resources at your disposal to prove your innocence. Memories fade, witnesses who you might use in your defense die, physical locations where you might have been may no longer be there. Let's say someone accuses you 40 years ago of molesting them, and I was with my dad at dinner then, or at a restaurant then. Well, your dad could be dead, the restaurant could be taken down, the waitress could no longer be found. At some point, if enough time passes and you are in fact innocent, you cannot adequately put on a defense. And that is the whole purpose of the statute of limitations, to require a fixed period of time to make sure that people wrongfully accused have a right to adequately defend themselves. So I think 50 years is frankly, more than enough time. When a person is 50 years old, that's more than enough time. That's an adequate statute of limitations. I wouldn't favor eliminating it.
Mr. Vitali, another one for you. Do you support the commercial development of Pennsylvania state lands for things such as golf courses, amusement parks, and drilling?
No, in fact, that was one of the examples of playing a good defense. I mean, give you an example. The reason, to criticize me for not getting a bill passed is like to criticize Fletcher Cox on the Eagles for not scoring touchdowns. That's not his role. His role is to stop the other quarterback from scoring the touchdowns. If you're in the minority party and you're working on environmental policy in a coal state, you're playing defense. You don't score touchdowns. This was something we did that was really good. There was an effort by a member of the Republican majority, Brian Ellis, to put water parks, golf courses, amusement parks in state parks, or at least start the process for doing that. I found out about that effort early enough. I knew the issue because it had come up years before at Prince Gallitzin State Park. We got the environmental groups together. We got the votes. We got the media involved. We publicized the issue. We loaded the bill up with amendments. We played a really tough defense, and we won. We substantially beat a bill introduced by a Republican leader with very little resources at our disposal. That is a win for people like me and what I'm doing. If you're working on environmental policy in a fossil fuel state, that's your touchdown. That's what you do, and that's was a very big victory for us.
Mr. Knapp?
I think the question was supporting state use for golf
Do you
courses?
support commercial development of state lands for essentially private purposes, like the instances were for drilling, amusement parks, golf courses?
No. Again, for golf courses, if it's state land, if they're going to sell it to a private, that's up to the purchaser to do it, but the state should not be in the golf course management business. Drilling, yeah, it's a different story. I think if you can safely and effectively drill on state lands and the state can get some of the revenue and get some of the resources and royalty fees that are going to private owners, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Tell you what, let's, we're right here at 8:40. Let's ask the two candidates to come up and make their closing statements, which, according to the card up here, should be 3 minutes each. Do you all know who's going
I'll
first?
just do it from here. I don't really have too much to say. I just wanted to thank the audience for their attention today. I wanted to thank the League for the great job they do. Thanks for to the residents of the 166th District for the trust they've placed in me. This has been an incredible honor to serve the people of my district for the last 24 years. I've tried to really earn that trust by really working as hard as I can every day. This is not just a job for me, it's my life, it's what I do. If elected, I will continue the approach I've been taking. I'll work really hard to protect the environment. I'll be a watchdog on the House floor. I'll continue to read bills, ask tough questions on all issues. I'll continue to continue to protect the interests of this district. My district office will continue to help people like they have done for the past 24 years. We'll continue to keep you informed as to what's happening in Harrisburg and the district. And the only thing I would say to Jim Knapp is, I think the most appalling thing I've heard in this debate is that you're a climate change denier. I find you need to look at the science. 97% of the world's atmospheric scientists acknowledge the climate change problem. This is not a matter of opinion anymore. It's scientific fact, and you really need to do a little more reading on that subject no matter what happens. So in closing, I just want to thank everyone, and I ask for people's support on November 8th.
Not following the climate global warming Bible doesn't make you a climate change denier. And that's the problem with this climate change activists and the greener than thou mentality that you have, Greg, is you think if everybody doesn't agree with you, that they're just wrong. Well, that's part of the problem that's wrong with this whole climate change. 90%, 97% of the people don't agree. Climate change people, climatologists, whatever they're considered, have been making predictions for 30 years, and they have continually been wrong. The alleged leaders continually come out with these studies that are flawed, that they're cheating, they're lying to get their funding. So if they can't be honest, and we can't have an honest discussion, nothing's ever going to get done. So again, you start out with the climate change denier. No, I'm not a climate change denier. It's fact. It's whatever the temperature tells you, whatever the core temperature of the Earth is. That's factual. The effects of it, we can have a discussion about. The reality is, with all this criticism and this fossil fuel, being the end of the world, the truth of the matter is, fossil fuels and the increased use of fossil fuels have provided us technology that prevents the effects of climate change. So the climate disasters we have were saved from as a result of our technology, which is directly parallel to fossil fuels. Now, I didn't mean to close on something like this, but part of the problem is when you're that extreme, you can't get anybody to go along with you. You talk about playing defense. It's time somebody plays offense for this district. Get some people to go along with them and gets their ideas, and to help us here in the 166th district, not in the northern and western parts of the state.
I want to thank both candidates for coming and answering questions for the audience. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on this event so you could be exposed to both parties. I encourage everyone in the audience that if your question did not get asked, to just ask the candidates directly. We're under time constraints, so we couldn't get to all the questions. But thank you very much for coming.